Minnesota Vikings tight end TJ Hockenson is one of the biggest dynasty buys this offseason. All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Mosher and Kate Magdizuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdizuk. You can check her out on Twitter at Kate Magdizuk. Kate, I believe TJ Hockenson is one of the biggest dynasty buys this offseason. After coming off the best season of his career, 914 yards, despite playing on two different teams. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I don't have many reasons why you're wrong. Now, I came into the show of the belief that I'm just going to hold all pass catchers in Minnesota because that, like, spoiler alert, that's where I was headed. But I'm intrigued because I have a different buy in mind. But, I think, like, in terms of the tight end position, we knew what TJ Hockenson was as a prospect. It does feel like he's finally kind of coming into full fruition of his potential upside. We know the offense is good. We know the quarterback is good. The only thing I think we have to answer is, does the addition of Jordan Addison, does that diminish any sort of long-term role for TJ Hockenson?
Probably not, right? I mean, I think Addison obviously is going to have a role in this offense, but I think Kirk Cousins is good enough, and I think the offense is good enough to support two receivers and a tight end. Okay, we mentioned, the overall numbers from Hockenson last year, but once he came, to the Vikings via the trade deadline, I thought he was really good, and it capped off with this playoff game where he saw 11 targets against the Giants, caught 10 passes for 129 yards. Like, I kind of think he's just the perfect fit with Justin Jefferson. Like, he's just so good in the middle of the field. Kirk Cousins is a very accurate quarterback who likes to throw the ball in the short to intermediate parts of the field. Plus, okay, we kind of know that, like, tight ends take a little bit of time to break out. Like, usually the breakouts start happening in year 4, year 5. We're going into year 5 with TJ Hockenson. He's only 25 years old. Like, why couldn't this be the year that he's 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns? Because he wasn't that far away last year.
Any concern here? So, looking at TJ Hockenson's overall production, yes, it was a career year. Now, the only question I think really stems from the drop in efficiency from a receiving standpoint. Had his career low 8.7 yards per reception, despite the fact that second highest catch rate in his career, 6 yards per target with the Minnesota Vikings, also a career low. Any of those efficiency metrics stand out to you, or?
I'm just not too concerned about it because he did jump in with the team halfway through the season, right? So they probably were trying to just give him some layups to get him started. That's why I think this is the perfect time to buy him, right? Now that he gets a full off season, we know his role in the offense. There's nobody that's going to take snaps from him. Like, he's going to be one of these players that's on the field 100% of snaps. I think this is the time to buy. And frankly, Kate, I was looking at some trades this morning on Dynasty League football, and I was blown away at how cheap you can get him. For example, I saw a deal that was Greg Dulcich in the 111 for TJ Hockenson. So if you have the 111 and you need a tight end, that's probably going to be Michael Mayer or Sam Laporta. I would rather just have TJ Hockenson.
Smash TJ Hockenson.
Yeah.
Smash.
Yeah. Here's another one. I mean, this one's really interesting. It's a non-tight end premium league, but TJ Hockenson for Najee Harris. I'll take TJ Hockenson.
Yeah, I think the stability that you can get at the tight end position, and obviously huge Najee Harris fan here. But what we've seen out of Najee Harris, I've been very vocal in the past about my concerns about the Steelers offense. But Najee Harris has not been efficient to this point in his career. I'll take the opportunity that is TJ Hockenson. Now, looking at the price in the trade market, it feels like this is a player you should be, sending offers out. I don't know.
Well, I got a
Yesterday,
couple more really quickly. Treylon Burks for TJ Hockenson. I'll take Hockenson. TJ
same.
Hockenson for DeAndre Swift straight up. Like, come on, guys. You're stealing, I mean, easily a top 5 dynasty tight end who's going into starting in the prime of his career. This just feels too easy, right? It's almost like a layup. Go grab TJ Hockenson right now.
Yeah, I looking at it like in Locked on or not Locked on Dynasty League football rankings. Holy moly. TJ Hockenson is ranked on average as the tight end 4, which feels like you're
It
getting
feels high.
It feels
right?
high, but like when you look at the surrounding cast, so like other players going around him, Travis Kelce going ahead of him, of course, but
Yep.
age 23, George Kittle, 29 years old,
Age
Dallas
33
Goedert,
for Kelce.
28.
Yes.
Or yeah, sorry. George Kittle, 29 years old, Dallas Goedert, 28 years old, like Darren Waller, age 30. Like out of all of these really productive tight ends, you look at TJ Hockenson and you're like, okay, so I've got the production, but also he's got several more years left in his career that it feels like a buy. Yeah, you sold me. You sold me, and I didn't come into this show with TJ Hockenson as my buy. I had somebody else.
Who we're going to get to in just a second. I will say in your startup drafts, it's a little bit harder to get him at a cheap price because it does feel like there's a drop off after the top 3 tight ends. And if you're worried about your tight end situation, he is going higher. But if you're already in a dynasty league and you need to upgrade your tight end position, but you don't want to pay up for a Kyle Pitts or a Mark Andrews or a Travis Kelce, I think going out and grabbing TJ Hockenson right now is the play. Okay, I want your dynasty buy from the Minnesota Vikings when we get back. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. We've got the Heat versus the Celtics tonight, Game 5 on FanDuel. Right now, the Celtics are 8-point favorites, which seems like a massive line. I think I'll take the Heat to keep it close. There is no better place to bet on all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official betting partner of the NBA. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, Kate and I are going to be answering your Twitter questions. We've got some really good ones, so make sure you are tuning in for that. Kate, who is your biggest dynasty buy from the Minnesota Vikings? Not named TJ Hockenson.
Not named TJ Hockenson, though TJ Hockenson is nearing the top of the list now. It's Kirk Cousins, who I just think perennially you cannot find a better value at the quarterback position than Kirk Cousins. Like, look, we know exactly what Kirk Cousins is. Like, there's no question mark out of what you're going to get from him. Maybe in terms of primetime production, like
Sure.
maybe you got to be a little nervous, but he's a very accurate quarterback. He's a good decision maker. He is just he's a good quarterback. He's productive. He's thrown for over 4,000 receiving yards in each of the last 3 regular seasons. He's coming off a career high passing yards. Now, like going back to what we saw from Kirk Cousins in 2022, right? First season under Kevin O'Connell, he actually saw a decent drop in efficiency production across the board, despite that career high passing yards. Averaged just 7.1 yards per attempt, under 66% completion rate, below average adjusted completion rate, below average career passing, like across the board, just it wasn't as efficient when you look at his career averages. Now, another year with Kevin O'Connell, we know the volume is there. We know the production is there. Now I think is the year where we start to see some of that efficiency that has been the staple of Kirk Cousins' career start to bounce back. Right now, on average, he's being drafted as a QB 17 in dynasty startups, which way too low. Because Marcus, there has been 1 year, 1 season since 2015 where Kirk Cousins has not finished as a top 12 quarterback.
Yep.
One single season.
So I'm gonna
Tell
give
me
you
how he's QB 17.
I'm gonna give you one reason why you should buy Kirk Cousins and one reason why you should sell him. So one of the reasons why I like Kirk Cousins so much is he just plays every game, right? He has started at least 15 games in every season since 2015. There was a season in 2021 where I think he missed the final game of the season. And then in 2019, I think he missed 2 games, I believe, or 1 game, excuse me, 1 game. So two starts since he became a full-time starter in 2015. That's really important if you're in a small bench dynasty league, which I am, because there's just a lot of value in knowing, hey, he's going to play, he's going to put up stats. I don't have to worry about him missing games. Again, that's valuable.
He's a
One of
plug
the
and
reasons,
play.
yeah, well, absolutely. One of the reason why I might be selling him is there's some questions about the long-term future for Kirk Cousins. It doesn't seem like Minnesota is going to give him a contract extension. This is the final year of his deal with the Vikings. So he could theoretically move on. And there's just a lot of uncertainty there, right? Like, is he going to go to a situation that's better than Minnesota? Probably not. And if that's the case, I probably am not going to be buying him. But I think you mentioned it, QB 17. Like, if I just need a low end QB1, I'm going to go trade for Kirk Cousins because he's going to do that every single year, basically, for you.
In a super flex, I think there is no better QB2
Absolutely.
than Kirk
Yes.
Cousins. Like, if you're in a super flex, you need to trade for Kirk Cousins right now because there is no other player that is just so easy. You don't have to think. There's not much analysis to do here. Again, you just know exactly what you're getting from Kirk Cousins on a week to week basis. It's potentially high ceiling. We know what he can do with Justin Jefferson. He's got Jordan Addison in the mix. He's got all the weapons. TJ Hockenson,
Good offensive line, right?
good offense. Like we know exactly what he has, at least for this year. But also, I don't know. I think that Kirk Cousins is a good enough quarterback who has produced regardless of situation, like year over year, even in Washington, just
Yes.
productive. And I think I think he's too good a quarterback not to produce anywhere that he is. So I'm buying across the board, regardless of concern.
I agree. Now, one of the players that you didn't mention that he's going to have this year is Dalvin Cook. There's a lot of uncertainty surrounding Dalvin Cook right now. It seems like the Vikings tried to trade him during the NFL draft. There was no suitors. It doesn't appear that he's going to play on his current contract, which leads a lot of people to believe that he could be released after June 1. I think you and I are both in agreement here. We both believe that Dalvin Cook is a dynasty sell. What are you willing to sell him for?
This like Dalvin Cook, he's tough, right? Because I do think that he's a good running back. Like
He
he's
is a good player.
still
Yep.
he's one of the better running backs in the NFL right now. But the issue I think is, first of all, we're approaching that sort of dead age, right? With the running back position. Like Dalvin Cook, it feels like there's a very small window right now where you're going to be able to sell Dalvin Cook. He's 27 years old. Like he's been pretty heavily utilized. Like we've seen shoulder issue after shoulder issue after shoulder issue. Like he hasn't been perfectly healthy, had the torn ACL. Like there's been enough, I think, variables here that have you concerned that like he's going to hit that age 27, age 28 wall where, I mean, we saw it with Zeke, like
It happens fast.
you have value and then you don't. And it's so quick.
Well, okay, I would mention this a guy that was in the same draft class as Dalvin Cook. Look at Leonard Fournette, right?
Yep.
A year ago, we were still excited about Leonard Fournette. Like he's coming off a good season. He's still a valuable pass catcher. And a year later, poof, gone. Not even on an NFL roster. There's just been no interest for him at all. I won't even be surprised if this summer if Dalvin Cook is released and it's crickets for a while, right? Like he just doesn't get a lot of interest.
And like, obviously, I think for right now, it's all speculation, right? We don't know the future of Dalvin Cook. Like maybe the team surprises us and doesn't release him. I don't think that's a thing. But like when you look at the current running back market, you still have Zeke in free agency. You still have Leonard Fournette, which it wouldn't surprise me at all if one of these guys, both of these guys find their way onto NFL teams, maybe post training camp. Maybe once, the injury bug starts to hit.
Mhm.
And I do think that what place would you want to send Dalvin Cook to? Like where he could maintain value, because the running back market is bleak. Like there is no roster that I'm looking at right now where I say, okay, so if he is cut and signs with XYZ team, I'll buy. There's not a single
I mean,
team.
Miami, maybe, but it seems like Miami sniffed around and decided not to do that. Then they also drafted Devin A-Chain. Thought about Buffalo, right? Joining up with his brother there. But I mean, there's not an ideal landing spot. You can mention Philadelphia, but they just traded for DeAndre Swift. They just signed Rashad Penny. They still have Kenneth Gainwell. There's not a clear-cut team that could use a running back like him right now. Now, maybe things change as we get closer to training camp and the regular season, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I worry about Dalvin Cook. I worry about all these running backs who've been super productive, like Aaron Jones, like Christian McCaffrey. He's got to hit that wall sooner rather than later.
Yep.
But out of all of these guys, obviously the biggest concern for me of the running backs in this range does stem from Dalvin Cook, just because of the uncertainty, because of the contract situation. It makes it really hard for him to project as a Minnesota Viking, and unfortunately, I think that's where he's most valuable.
We've got a couple trades really quickly for Dalvin Cook that I want your thoughts on. Dalvin Cook for Darren Waller.
I'll take Darren Waller.
Yeah, I think I would as well. Dalvin Cook for the 203.
So is that Superflex?
I can pull it up
Doesn't
here
say.
real quick. Yes, this is a super flex league. Yes.
It probably depends on like what we're talking in that range. I would presume maybe we're talking like a who's going in that range? Say Flowers, like
Yeah, maybe some of the tight ends in that range, right?
yeah, maybe a Michael Mayer.
Yeah,
That
that's
one's
tough.
close for me, but
Okay.
I'd still probably lean with the pick.
Okay, so here's the last one. Non-super flex league, Dalvin Cook for 211. I think at that point, I'm not trading him for the 211.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's
So
spot on.
we're saying basically an early second round pick is probably what you're looking for if you want to move him, or another established veteran at a different position like a Darren Waller. But yeah, I think this is a sinking dynasty asset where if you can get off him now this offseason and just kind of get off this ride, I think it's wise. If not, you're probably just, riding through it, hoping that he lands in a good situation, or more likely, and probably the most ideal situation, is that he just stays in Minnesota for another year, right?
Yeah, that's what you're hoping for. I fear that this is going to be a rocky road
Yep.
for Dalvin Cook managers.
All right, let's talk about our dynasty hold for the Minnesota Vikings when we get back. All right, Kate, let's talk about the player that we are holding in our dynasty leagues for the Minnesota Vikings. You and I have the same player here. It's Justin Jefferson. Why are you holding him?
The issue with Justin Jefferson is that it's you know what you're getting, period.
Yeah.
You're getting the best wide receiver in the NFL. He is my wide receiver one in Dynasty. It's kind of similar to, we had a conversation last week about selling Patrick Mahomes and what does it cost? It's going to take a top 5 asset plus a king's ransom in draft capital. That's kind of how I feel about Justin Jefferson, because it's just always difficult to move on from the number one asset in Dynasty. Wide receiver, we know that's a position of longevity. We can see, we see year over year, like that investment in the wide receiver position can offer a lot of stability as opposed to the running backs, as opposed to making investments in tight ends. Like, how do you? I just don't know what the selling point is for Justin Jefferson, and I think it's a bit too high. So I'd prefer that safety net.
I agree. I mean, if you have him, you're not selling him unless you get a king's ransom. And I don't know that you can buy him right now for the same reason, right? If you want to buy him, the current manager that owns him is going to want a king's ransom. Although I will say, I went to Dynasty League football this morning and looked at some trades, and there were a few that made me think, I might do that. I'll read them to you really quickly. Justin Jefferson for CeeDee Lamb and Christian Watson. I'll take Justin Jefferson there.
I'll take Justin Jefferson. Yeah.
Yeah. Justin Jefferson for Garrett Wilson in the 112.
Ooh, that one's no, too late. The pick's too late.
Yeah,
Justin
exactly.
Jefferson.
And there's a couple of those that have some variance with with Garrett Wilson and a pick with Justin Jefferson, but
The pick needs to be higher. I think Garrett Wilson, obviously a guy that's like a fringe top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty right now. So like the asset is right. The pick needs to be higher.
Yeah. And it's just, I need to be dramatically improving my team at probably another position for me to move off Justin Jefferson, which you're just not going to do. And at the same time, do I really want to give up Garrett Wilson in like the 102 to get Justin Jefferson? Especially if you're in a super flex league where that pick has even more value. Probably not. So we just recommend holding him across all formats because, listen, you want elite players. He's the best receiver in the league. He's 23 years old. He's on a historic pace, and he's in an offense that force feeds him the ball. So there's really no reason to move off of him at all right now. Hold on to him and enjoy winning a lot of fantasy games.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen of the day. Again, every day, tomorrow on the show, Kate and I are going to be answering your Dynasty questions. So make sure you tune in for that. You can follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Magdizuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. And we'll see you guys right back here tomorrow.